Everybody was waiting for him to talk about what happened on Sunday night, and he was just classy about it, and he made a joke out of it. He's like, did everybody have a good weekend?
Actor Bruce Willis saying goodbye to acting, the star of the Die Hard series, Armageddon and The Sixth Sense, revealing a new health issue. ABC News chief national correspondent Matt Gutman.
His family, including his wife Emma and his ex-wife Demi Moore, releasing a joint statement posted on Moore's Instagram account. Bruce has been experiencing some health issues and has recently been diagnosed with aphasia, which is impacting his cognitive abilities. Aphasia is a disorder that can affect a person's ability to produce and or comprehend language.
A report of the Los Angeles Times says during some recent work on movies, Willis had some of his lines fed to him through an earpiece. Mississippi teachers in line for the biggest raise they have seen in a generation. The governor there signing a measure that will hike teacher pay in his state by an average of 10%. And success for the U.S. men's national soccer team, even after a failure. Despite losing a match with Costa Rica 2-0, the U.S. has qualified for the World Cup later this year in Qatar. The men's team failed to qualify for the tournament 4 years ago. This is ABC News.
There's something for everyone on Discovery Plus. The streaming home of ghostly freakouts, muscle car spinouts, and 90-day makeouts.
I'm really in love with her.
Start your free trial today for exclusive originals and a huge collection of favorites.
Whoa!
Then dive into nature docs, geek out with the family, and get your grub on.
I could eat this every day.
The streaming home of true crime, paranormal, food, home, nature, romance, plus so much more. Discovery Plus. Start your free trial. Terms apply.
I'm Sherry Preston, ABC News.
Hello, everyone, and happy Thursday. We're watching the sky closely today as strong to severe thunderstorms are possible from lunchtime and through the afternoon. Damaging winds will be a main threat as those storms move through. And we'll also see windy conditions even before the showers arrive. We'll see gusts up to 40 miles per hour for today. We're under a level 1 and 2 risk for severe storms. Highs today are staying in the 70s. For Friday, we'll see highs in the mid to upper 60s and lower 70s. Sunshine in the afternoon. I'm meteorologist Zach Malak in the Weather Center.
And we're currently still 61. We've been there for a while now. We'll be changing a little bit later, going up to 74 when the rain subsides and the clouds remove themselves, and we'll be warming up. And all this rain should end noonish, around 2 o'clock or so. This afternoon should be partly cloudy. And then tomorrow looks pretty good all day on Friday. Sunny skies, highs around 71 with wind gusts to 15 miles per hour. So we still got a lot of gusty winds to deal with. But right now, let's enjoy the moment.
It's time now for My Great America with Jim and Butch, a conversation about positive things about this great country. And now here are Jim and Butch.
Well, here we are, Butch, back in the Blue Room again with My Great America. Welcome back. You were in Washington, D.C. yesterday.
I was in Washington, D.C. You know what, Jim, though? I wanted to let you know that when you get going on things, I want to come in here sometimes and just
fan me, yeah.
Fan you a little bit. Yes, I had the opportunity. I was blessed to have the privilege to meet a dear friend, Henry Spitzer. He's a businessman, Orthodox Jew. 7 children from New York City. We met up in Washington, D.C. We had meetings yesterday with Congresswoman Virginia Foxx. We also had meetings with Madison Cawthorn and his senior staff on a variety of issues. And then I have a college roommate, Dr. Gary Andres, who's the Republican staff director for the House Ways and Means Committee. He served under George H.W. Bush in the White House as the Director of Legislative Affairs, which is the group or the unit in the White House that advocates for executive policies on Capitol Hill. So it was a Washington day. It was real successful, grateful that God gave us a lot of favor. There's a lot of follow-up that needs to happen. And then tonight, we actually are helping support an event for Senator Ted Alexander.
Good man.
State Senator, very good man. It's going to be an event at Calder and Valentine on Marion Street, which is the old Blanton House historic home. It's on the Registry of Historic Places. And we're really looking forward to that. We're expecting a number of people. But Ted Alexander, who's the NC Senate District 44 head, we're going to have Speaker of the House Tim Moore. The invitation was also on behalf of Senator Kathy Harrington, who's the Senate Majority Leader, Jason Williams, who's the North Carolina Director for Faith and Freedom, and then we've got a number of guests, Commission of Labor, Josh Dobson, Senator Kevin Corbin, Senator Carl Ford, Senator Amy Galey, Steve Garris, Todd Johnson, Joyce Crutz, Paul Newton, Norm Sanderson, Representative Kelly Hastings, Donnie Loftus, Jason Sain, and others this evening from 6:30 until 8. So it's going to be a nice collection representative of some of the best and hardest workers in Raleigh. And Jim, in the face of a lot of criticism, there are some people that suit up and show up and jump in and do the work, aren't there?
There are, and Ted's now been friends a long time. He is one of those that does that. He dresses up, suits up, and jumps in, and not afraid to fight for the cause.
Well, and when we first started meeting about 8 or 10 months ago, he confessed, and I really appreciated this. He said, "Butch, I'm good at doing my job, representing my constituency, and I'm terrible at representing myself and sharing with people why I ought to be in there again." And over the course of what became our little Shelby Cafe summits, where he introduced me to the delectable nature of liver mush, and finally he's telling people, Butch he's crossed over the Rubicon. He's crossed over the bridge. He's one of us now because he'll order that with a single egg. He just said, "Would you help?" And so a group of us felt compelled to just give him a hand and try to say, look, it's not high pressured, but we want you to get behind Ted because he's like 100% on the Faith and Freedom scorecard when it comes to conservative values, Jim.
He's been a man of faith ever since I've known him. Of course, originally director of the Chamber of Commerce in Shelby.
And I think he was the mayor at one point.
He was the mayor, that's correct.
And he was the mayor at one point. And, he's one of the, and now he works with the, I think North Carolina, like historic homes or where they identify historic properties, put them in covenant, acquire them. He's just really, he's a person of faith. He attends his church. He's very involved there. We really love him. And so tonight we're hoping from 6:30 until 8. And if you're out in that area and you want to stop by, feel free. 6:30 to 8. It's at 303 West Marion Street in Shelby, the historic Blanton House, now the office of Calder in Valentine, which is a family law, marriage and family law entity that's there in Cleveland County.
Well, it's worth going for just to see that house renovation. I was there for the official grand opening.
Yeah, it's the grand opening.
I was there when the Gardner-Webb president years ago lived there.
Right.
Big contrast between those days when the president of Gardner-Webb lived there and what's happened to that beautiful transition.
Right. It's been great. And there's a high attention to detail and really try to preserve, an attempt to preserve Josh Valentine and Blake Calder, the two partners there, Jonathan Kidd, he's a third attorney, strong team. And it's really becoming, with God's help, a premier marriage and family law-oriented service platform for Gaston, Cleveland, and Lincoln counties. Jim, I was looking at the history, and I guess Jesse Owens years ago died today. He said once, and it reminded me of what the spirit of My Great America has been all about from the very beginning, from the first time the music came on and you and I looked at each other and knew it was the start of a journey. He said once, Jesse Owens, find the good. It's all around you. Find it, showcase it, and you'll start believing in it. And to me, on the anniversary of his death, it really struck me. That's really what we've been trying to do, isn't it?
It sure is. I like that. That ought to be framed on the walls of every school classroom.
Right. Find the good. Sandra Norris, who has touched so many lives in this county, will often say to me, it's a choice. It's a choice. Our attitude and how we approach whatever's thrown at us in life is a choice. And for those of us that are born again and those of us that claim to follow Jesus, want to hear his voice and do his will, it's a choice every day to believe that even if we don't understand it, and especially when we don't understand circumstances, what seems on the surface to be the untimely death of people, businesses that fail, marriage partners that walk out the door, whatever it may be, we can always have the assurance that God never fails us. He promised to never leave or forsake us. And Jim, we've got to keep banging that drum because there are voices that conspire to try to steal the joy of people in our county, and we're not going to let that happen.
Mr. Dale Carnegie once said, we can't always control the situations surrounding us, but we can control our attitude toward those situations.
Exactly. Exactly. And some of the most positive and upbeat and encouraging, get outside of themselves and encourage others, people that I've ever known, have quietly dealt with a chronic illness, have dealt with situations in their life that most people don't know. And you can be an encouragement to anybody. I mean, we say it often. When you see a police officer, policeman, policewoman, EMT, people that are pouring their life into the community, pastors. Do you know, a lot of the research said that about half of all, well, it was 46.2% of pastors in one study during the pandemic pondered the possibility of leaving the ministry. And you know, we don't encourage our pastors enough. It's a hard, if you take it seriously, it's a hard job. You know, I know, I have known a lot of preachers, and I've consulted for a lot of major preachers around the globe, but I tell people often, I feel like at my church, Word of Faith Fellowship, I have the first pastor that I've ever had. Somebody that I know cares for my soul. Somebody who cares enough to say, Butch, that didn't sound right. Or to ask the question, how are you doing? Or this is a scripture that you really need to take to heart. Being a pastor is hard work. And it's a high calling. It's a sacred calling. So we need to do more to encourage our pastors, Jim.
A lot of preachers, not as many pastors.
Yeah, and I tell the story. I may have shared it on My Great America before. A lot of people, like I remember this one named preacher. I mean, everyone would know the name if I shared it. When I asked him about his pastoral ministry, he said, that's too messy. I have people that do that. I just like to study and preach, get up and be on the camera. And I thought to myself, how tragic.
Yeah.
That's not what the Apostle Paul did. You look in the epistles, he was deep in the weeds on people's stuff. Incest, you're not giving, you're not supporting, you're not getting along, you're not loving the way that you need to. I mean, the Apostle Paul wasn't sitting behind the camera saying, in today's lesson, I mean, he had the mud and the grime of jumping into the lives of people, and that's what you find in the Pauline epistles. It's one of the reasons why when I ask people, have you been in God's Word? I had somebody not too long ago that said, it's just so dull and boring. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? The Word of God is alive and active, sharper than a two-edged sword. And everything that we need for our life in a generation that's increasingly dark and perverse is right here, Jim.
It's many things, but boring is not one of them.
It is not. It is not. And you know, when you go back and you realize in our history, one of the things we tried to do with My Great America, we hear from people, I do, that they like sometimes the little pithy historical snippets. You know, there is an unbroken history of the impact of God on this nation. From the very beginning, the improbability of this fledgling nation and its survival in the midst of going up against the greatest power in the world at that time, this little ragamuffin group of patriots who said, with God's help and with it reminds me of the Ukrainians right now. Yeah, you're not taking our country. Mow them back, bring it on. And we need to make sure that we recognize that there's a difference between soulish confidence and being braggadocious and having that inspired sense that God gives that we're on a mission. And we are on a mission. This little radio program is on a mission that is quite clear as darkness attempts to encroach and division attempts to happen in our county, and lies and innuendo and fabrication and waxy-eared, dark-eyed minions try to scream untruth to the county. We're going to say, no way. It's not going to happen on our watch. And, we're in a season, Jim, where unfortunately, as I mentioned recently on a program, we've got a lot of innuendo and attack, and it's just not right, and it needs to stop. We need to get back to focusing on what do we have in common? What do we have in common? And if people acknowledge Jesus, if people want to work together, I'm not going to criticize what kind of bullets somebody has in their gun if we're all in the same war. I'm not going to say I wish you had different kinds of bullets.
I'm not a judge of anybody discouraged, but I have noticed the fact that those folks who are negative and always tossing out grenades against churches and your church and things that are being done positively, when I see those folks that are doing that, I look at them, and many of them show unhappiness in their face.
Right.
They're not happy people.
Right.
I don't know what's going on in their hearts, but if you're a happy person and content with your heart and soul, you're not going to be attacking other people.
Right. And so I remember in my own life when I had bitterness and I had resentment and a lack of forgiveness towards some people, that poisoned the well. And, I was taught early on when I came to our church, Word of Faith Fellowship, you can't give what you don't have. I can't give godly encouragement if I have the soiledness of not forgiving people. God tells us to do good to those who despitefully use us. I had somebody that in a text recently said something to me I've never had a human being say to me in my life. It was crass and it was perverse. Did it get me angry? No. Was my response to this person angry? No. No, my response was, it's clear something or someone hurts you badly, and for that, because that's what is driving this. For that, I'm really sorry. And I just want to let you know, I was in a similar place in my life, and God has been healing that. We're supposed to speak as an oracle of God, and whenever we have something in us that's coming back at a person, that is not Jesus. Doesn't mean we don't have conviction. Doesn't mean that we don't confront the untruth. But what it does mean is we do it in a way that's consistent with the manner of how God has called us to do it. We're called to pray for our enemies, do good to those who despitefully use you, go the extra mile, give them the coat off your back. You can't do that unless you're born again and the Spirit of the living God is working through you. I don't hate anybody, and I honestly love everybody. And even all the people that throw invectives and accusations against my church, we don't hate anybody. We don't. And love, Jim, never fails. I really believe that. Love never fails.
Bless you. Allergy season.
It is allergy, and you know what? I'm watching to see what you do with your allergies, because I know you deal with postnasal drip and all of that, and it may be that I'm just feeling closer to you, Jim. I don't